Hey, what's happening, guys? I hope you're all fantastic. I have another throwback review for you. This one was requested by the viewers on Twitter, and today we're going to take it back to 1994. It was a great year. The Sony PlayStation came out, the Sega Saturn went out of business, the Beastie Boys came out with the most amazing music video of all time in Sabotage, Green Day started a small mud fight in Woodstock, and Jean-Claude Van Damme would star in his highest grossing film to date, Timecop. Timecop, of course, starred Van Damme, as well as Ron Silver, Mia Sara, Gloria Rubin, and Bruce McGill. It was directed by Peter Hyams, who also directed some entertaining films like Running Scared and The Presidio, as well as some other Van Damme movies that I really enjoyed, like Sudden Death and the most recent Enemies Closer, a small-budget film from 2013 that I would recommend to any Van Damme fans out there that haven't seen it. This movie is based on the anthology comic from Dark Horse Comics, and it follows Max Walker, an agent for the Time Enforcement Commission. So of course time travel is now possible, and Agent Walker will try to stop a corrupt senator who coincidentally voted for the use of time travel from going back and using it himself to fund his presidential campaign. This is something that Walker is extremely motivated to do because his wife was murdered 10 years earlier, and he feels if he cannot go back and save her, then he's not going to let a politician go back and make money illegally. Now, like I said, this is Van Damme's highest grossing film, narrowly edging out Universal Soldier from 1992, and it came out during the massive run of Van Damme's action movie dominance. And admittedly, after a very cool opening scene set in the 1800s with a man gunning down some Confederate soldiers with some automatic weapons, the film does start out relatively routine. I mean, we get all the Van Damme-isms, we get some cheesy dialogue, a nice show of flexibility blended with humor. As Van Damme stops a crime, we get a love scene with a little afternoon delight with some boobies and Van Damme butt cheeks, and early on this movie looks like it's going to follow the course of all the other Van Damme movies. But for me, this movie really changes in one scene later in the first act where Scott Lawrence as Spoda perfectly delivers some honestly exposition-heavy dialogue that does actually set things up very well, and from there the storyline follows a fun path that weaves time travel in without any real glaring holes. Yes, there certainly are some holes in this story, but none were enough to really pull me out of it, with most being easy to look over. We are then introduced to Senator McComb, played excellently in my opinion by Ron Silver. I think he was the perfect villain for this role. His performance was great. He portrayed a perfect blend of arrogance and sarcasm and ruthlessness that made him a very imposing antagonist despite his lack of physical prowess. I think Silver also had some entertaining chemistry with Van Damme and a couple of scenes that just reek of male bravado, and they come off very effectively for this movie. The script keeps the pace moving. It shows a clear focus on the story rather than just the action, and with some solid side characters to fill the script, there's a good balance of story, acting, and action that, in my opinion, makes this one of Van Damme's most complete films. Now, that is not to say there isn't some action in this movie, because there is more than plenty of it. There are a handful of fun action sequences that are nothing but nostalgic today. This film has all the punching, kicking, knife fights, and gunplay, and it uses a smooth balance of it all throughout the storyline that honestly just result in some classic moments.
Have a nice day.
Now, one thing I really did enjoy about this movie was often something that can hinder time travel movies, and that was the continuity. I think this movie did a really good job of implementing different time periods, and it all added some cool elements to the story. It did some explaining of how Senator McComb was able to make his money, and the storyline still managed to have a good flow to everything. And like I mentioned earlier, this movie keeps the story progressing. It has some fun twists and turns. It delivers a solid third act climax that creates some fun tension. There were also some ridiculously amusing henchmen in this movie that looked like they were pulled straight from the WWE or the WWF if you're old like me, that always make me laugh. Plus, we get two versions of Van Damme fighting the bad guys in the finale. We get a younger 1994 Van Damme, and we get the future Van Damme with the perfectly blown out hair helmet like he was trying out his best impersonation of Martin Riggs, but less edgy and maybe more Head and Shoulders promo. But overall though, even after all the years, this is a fun movie, and when grading it against other action movies from the mid-90s, 90s, I will proudly give Timecop an A-. It's a solid film for its time. It still holds up today. It did have some flaws. The dialogue was unintentionally cheesy at times, as was Van Damme's performance, but he delivers more than enough charm in the role. And that's my throwback review of Timecop, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. I apologize if I said Van Damme 1,000 times. I feel like I definitely did. But like I said, this review was voted on by you guys on Twitter. I routinely put out polls for choices on these throwback reviews, so make sure to follow me at Your Cinema, guys, so you can cast your vote on the next one. Thanks for watching as always, guys. You're all fantastic, and I'll see you at the movies.